People often think houses are made of wood and nails. They aren't. Houses are memory stores. They are the way your child learns to tie a shoelace, and the place your husband taught you how to carve initials into a banister on a summer evening. Ours was like that. Charles was practical in the way men of his generation were. He planned, he saved, and he signed papers as if signatures were talismans. When we first bought the place, we put a little stick figure family in the window. Charles frowned at my whim, but humored me. We planted 2 magnolia trees, then a small vegetable patch, then a swing from Melissa when she was old enough to swing herself out of her shoes. Melissa grew up knowing the steps of the house better than the town. She knew which floorboard creaked the loudest and which drawer her father used to hide the better chocolates. When Charles got sick, he made me promise things that sounded like stubbornness and love. He signed a deed revision, something he called practical poetry. He told me, "If anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll sleep in our bed until you choose to leave it." He underlined the clause that kept our house tethered to my life, a life estate. He trusted paperwork the way others trust prayers. When he was gone, I swore I'd honor that trust. I taped the deed into an old brass box with his watch. I told myself the paper would be a small, stubborn protection. No one would take the ground out from under my feet while his handwriting still held sway. The surgeon's office smelled like antiseptic and newspapers. I remember the light coming in through the blinds like a sheet of pale stage light. The diagnosis was blunt and clinical, but Charles's voice, the echo of it, was constant in my head. "Be sensible," he had said years earlier. The irony was that sensibility sometimes looks a lot like stubbornness. Melissa drove me to the hospital. She was younger than she looked now. The hospital's fluorescent bulbs seemed to age her in the way they do. She held my hand and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything." It was a line practiced in the same little theater as "I love you" and "I'm proud of you." I took it like sustenance. The surgery went well. Good reports, careful stitches, good nurses who came with smiles and trays. For 3 weeks, the world narrowed to a single room with a window and machines that counted time by beeps. Melissa seemed tireless in visits. Sometimes she stayed late, sometimes she left quick, apologetic. She brought soup, a stack of magazines, and a grin that could have been pale joy or the thin paint on fear. There were moments of small confusion. Once, she leaned over me with the papers she wouldn't show me. Another day, she whispered about getting rid of the place and left the room with a laugh. I didn't pry. I had been a mother too long to distrust the weight of my child's words. I took her promises because that's what mothers do. They swallow worry and believe. When I was discharged, I made a mental list of the things I'd return to. The chair by the kitchen window where Charles read, the scratch on the table where Melissa dropped a marble at 5, the blue vase my sister gave us at graduation. The taxi crawled down Maplewood Lane, and my chest filled with anticipation. The driveway had cars I didn't recognize. The welcome mat said a name I hadn't seen in a while. The hanging ferns were gone. The curtains had been replaced by cheap store-bought panels. My key, the familiar nick thing that had sung a little air in the lock for 40 years, refused to turn. I stood with my palm on the brass knob and felt the world tilt a little. A woman opened the door. She had a toddler on her hip and a look that mixed apology and awkwardness. "Hi," she said. "We're the Hendersons. We bought this place last week." Her voice was soft as cotton. "Your daughter sold it. She said you were moving to assisted living." Her words spread like cold water. I thanked them. I remember being formal, rehearsed, as if I'd been placed on a stage. I sat on a step until the taxi came and told the driver to take me to Anderson and Wells. Mr. Anderson's office smelled of leather and old smoke. He had known us a long time. When I told him, he folded his hands and did not say the words people expect. "I'm sorry." Instead, he opened the file and let the paper talk. There it was, the deed, clear, legal, and stubborn. Life estate, my name on the line that meant the house could not be alienated during my lifetime. Charles had anticipated the kind of small cruelties life often disguises as convenience. He had insisted on a clause that treated me like a person with agency, not a line item in an inheritance. Mr. Anderson explained the mechanism with the clarity of someone who'd watched many storms. The sale could be voided. The title company could be called. The buyer would be protected by escrow and could get refunded, but the seller, whoever had signed my name, would be culpable. You did not have to shout punishments in town squares. You called the county clerk, the title company, and you watched the paperwork do its neat, unromantic work. We moved immediately. Emergency filings, letters. He typed and stamped and spun the gears of legal machinery. A notice went out. The transaction was under dispute. I will not pretend it was small drama. Legal processes are like long ropes pulled in rooms where men and women in tailored suits look at numbers and signatures the way priests look at scripture. There were calls with the Hendersons, who were livid and ashamed, calls with the title company, and a slow, polite filing that read like the slow unhealing of a wound. When you have to undo a sale someone pushed through, you follow a map of consequences. We found email she'd sent at midnight, a scanner's flat glare where her forged signature was replicated, and a chain of transfers that moved money like a hidden river. The realtor's notary stamp had been careless. The notarization was sloppy. Forensics loves sloppiness. The title company placed the buyer's funds into escrow. The Hendersons received a full refund and apologized they had not known. But Melissa's accounts froze. The bank called Mr. Anderson and asked for subpoenas. Word reached small ears. Small towns gossip with the same relentless curiosity as seagulls following a fishing boat. A whisper turned to a rumor. The rumor turned to a Sunday morning talk in church basements and a woman at the bank's window telling the teller she'd always thought Melissa had been a little above herself. Her world closed in on itself. People who once called her for small favors found reasons to be busy. Friends who had been quick to accept dinner invitations were slow to answer. Professional contacts pulled away. The realtor's license was put on a conditional review. The bank's freeze was painful. It felt like a hand closing around the throat of an adult who tried to outrun debt with deception. I didn't dance in any victory. I watched the law do what the law was supposed to do. It restored the house. It returned titles. It placed consequences in neat, effective ink. For me, that was enough. When Melissa came back to the house that evening, I heard her steps before I saw her. It was like watching a hurricane step into an empty room. She stood in the doorway, a woman folded inward, hair pulled in a careless bun, mascara smudged. "Mom," she said. The word was raw. I poured tea and set a cup across for me. The ritual of offering warmth is an old tool. Even in trial, people want to be nourished. She took the cup, but did not drink. "I'm sorry," she said at last. "I thought I was fixing something. I thought I could patch the bills and make it right before you ever knew." "Fixing," I repeated. "Melissa, you sold the house we promised each other we'd grow old in. You signed my name without asking." She had a list of reasons that sounded like rope thrown at drowning. Mortgage bills, the business she said she'd start, a partner who left debts in his wake, and emergencies she'd kept quiet. There was fear in every syllable. There was also something I recognized. A person who had been taught to move in markets where risk glitters like possible salvation. I felt in a flash what it must have been to be her. 20-somethings with medical bills, the pressure of the economy like a fog. Still, forging a parent's name is not desperation, it's a choice. It is a theft disguised as care. I did what many parents do. I gave an ultimatum that sounded like justice and mercy braided together. You will make restitution where possible, I said. You will accept probation with the bank, repay what you can, and most importantly, you will accept the trust you broke. We will not live together as we did. We will rebuild a relationship slowly. You will not be punished beyond the law, but you will face the consequences. She cried until she couldn't, then left in a slow, small exile. Our house closed its doors to the clamor for a while, and I sat on the porch where the magnolia leaves whispered the small, indifferent weather of seasons. Small towns have long memories. People wrote notes in my mailbox, some tender, some scolding. Church ladies brought casseroles, mostly to me to keep me fed, and muttered about faith and forgiveness. Children still trundled past with scooters, their parents knowing full well the drama, but choosing the neutral ground of neighborly kindness. Melissa's attempts at repair were halting. She got a job in town again, one that used hands instead of signatures. She did not announce herself. She returned to our church pews, but sat in the back. She wrote me letters at first that were more apology than conversation. Over months, those letters turned from plaintive to reflective, as if the act of putting words down had the discipline to make her see what she had done. There were days when I wanted to go find her and drag her back into the house and demand all the explanations in the world. There were also days when I appreciated the quiet the house offered, the way the floors held memory like old books, the way the kettle sang a particular note on the stove, the way sunlight came through the kitchen window at 6 and spilled a golden sweep on the table where we ate pie. It's important to say that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. It's not an eraser. It is rather a long, steady act of choice. I chose, in the months after the sale was annulled, to be measured. I wrote notes. I accepted Sunday calls. I allowed Melissa to sit and help with small repairs. I made her wash dishes and scrub the backyard where Charles used to prune. Hands learn humility the way they learn music, slowly, with practice. She volunteered at the community center and slowly found a rhythm. She met a woman there who had once been in debt as well and learned, through the blunt tool of shared humiliation, how to speak without fear. She had to work back the trust of people who counted on her for seasonal help. Trust is like a bridge that bends but can be rebuilt with the right planks. We didn't reconcile in fireworks. We reconciled in slow, careful lines. A call on birthdays, a letter when the season changed, her presence at the church for Christmas dinner. The small moments are always the ones that matter. We were never the same, and maybe we would not want to be. Pain changes people. So does waiting. Years later, when the cherry tree buds and the house smells of the same late summer tomatoes I used to can, I sit on the porch in the chair Charles once favored. Sometimes Melissa comes by to bring a cake, Other times she calls to ask about a recipe. We speak in shorter sentences than before, but with less need to fill every silence. I tell the story not as a trophy, not as triumph, but as testimony. Law and patience are tools. A life estate on a deed is not about being cruel, it's about practical care. My husband's signature was a small fortress against small cruelties. My daughter's error was a human one, born of fear, not pure malice. The law corrected the error. Time gave us a chance to be people again. If you ever feel small, remember this: the things you think are most vulnerable, your name, your history, your home, can be protected with forethought and love. And if someone close to you missteps, remember that consequence and compassion can travel together, even if the road between them is sharp. If this story taught anything, it is that dignity can be defended without screaming, that the quiet gear of legal paper can sometimes restore what the loud world tries to arrange, and that children, even the ones who hurt us, may still need the slow hand of a mother's patience.
Paper isn't just paper. Names are not just words. Protect what you love quietly, firmly, and without apology. If this moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of quiet justice.